A few people had an idea of the desperate state the royal marriage was in. One of them was tabloid journalist Andrew Morton.
I remember Andrew ringing me up. He was one of the journalists that rang me up and said, I hear you've been at Highgrove, and, was it really awful atmosphere between them, and their marriage is on the rocks and everything. I said, no, I don't think you're right, Andrew. I think you've got it right. Their marriage isn't on the rocks. I'm the one that's been there having a drink and watching them and sitting there and talking to them, not you. I'm right, there's nothing wrong with their marriage. I couldn't have been further from the truth.
Diana later secretly communicated with Morton. His explosive book was published 4 years after those 40th birthday portraits, and shortly after the princess posed alone in front of the world's greatest monument to love, the Taj Mahal. Observers could be forgiven for thinking that the media-savvy princess was preparing the public for the shocking revelations she knew were to come. Jane believes that the role played by the press that day at the Taj Mahal is often overlooked.
I think it was probably more of a press manipulation that day. It was a good story, a good line, and the journalists put it together. I think it was, blown up to suit the story of the day, really.
When Charles visited the Taj Mahal in 1980, before the marriage, he told the press he'd like to bring his wife there one day. But on that day in 1992, he had another engagement. The palace wanted some of the press to accompany the prince. But the story was Diana, and the shot was Diana on her own in front of the Taj Mahal.
The photographers instigated that. We didn't want her sitting there with all hundreds of the officials, and we didn't want anyone else in the picture. We just wanted her for that classic Indian picture.
One more.
She wasn't going to sit there on her own because of the marriage. It was because we were pressing to get that picture.
Thank you very much.
The other bit that everybody always comments on is when she went off and sat on a bench in the far corner.
I think it was a simple logistics thing, because she knew that we had to get back to a position down there because she'd been told that we wanted the picture of her walking towards us. She was obviously, briefed to hang back a little bit, and everybody sort of said that she went there to sort of think about her marriage, but I think that was just the spin of the day.
Both press and the princess knew how to manipulate her image. 4 months after the photo call at the Taj Mahal, the publication of Andrew Morton's book showed beyond doubt that the royal marriage was deeply unhappy. Jane had been approached about the book. The publishers called her to ask if she'd like to do a private photo session with the princess.
I was astounded. I thought, Andrew Morton and Diana, this is a very strange combination. But I thought, well, if she's agreed to do it, then I'll agree to do it. I'm quite happy to do it. So I said, yes, I'll do it. And we planned that it would be done in a few weeks, and that they would get in touch with me, and we would decide what sort of pictures we'd do, and we'd try and do some nice informal ones at home. And so I was very excited, drove home very excited about this project, but obviously I had to keep it absolutely hush-hush. I wasn't allowed to tell anyone. And then eventually I got a phone call from the publishers saying, oh no, it's a change of plans now. You don't need to come and do any photographs. We're still doing the book, but we've got some photographs from somewhere else.
Photographs from a specially arranged shoot would have revealed the princess's direct association with Andrew Morton.
It was really difficult not to tell anyone that I knew, because there's all this controversy going on about in the newspapers about did she help or didn't she help, and I knew that she was directly talking to them about the book, so there was no question about it.
Diana wanted people to believe what they were reading and chose to show her support for the book in a more subtle way. Pictures of her paying a friendly visit to Caroline Bartholomew, one of the book's named contributors, did the trick. The photographer who took this picture had been tipped off as to when and where the crucial photo opportunity would take place. In the wake of the book, Jane received more and more requests for pictures of the unhappy couple.
This was a classic example of how picture editing can suit the story of the day. It was in Italy, and they were very happy on that trip, and the pictures were very happy. And at the time, photographs of them smiling were used widely. But then years later, when the sort of marriage had broken up and people were looking for pictures of them looking grumpy, they used this picture that came out the archive. In fact, she's actually adjusting her sunglasses. She's not being grumpy at all, but, it's an example of how you can sort of choose the picture to suit the mood, really. The camera does lie.
On the couple's last official tour in November 1992 to Korea, there was no shortage of shots of them looking gloomy.
There was a banquet where she sort of yawned and looked as if she wanted to go to sleep, and all the time Prince Charles was doing his speech, she was looking fed up, bored, totally upstaging him. She didn't want to be there, and she wanted us all to know it.
A month later, the couple separated. With her position as Prince Charles's future queen compromised, Diana set out to redefine her public role. On visits to Red Cross projects in Nepal and Zimbabwe the following year, Diana was remodelling herself as a goodwill ambassador for Britain. She wanted the press to take her seriously.
When we were in Nepal, she got very touchy about people who've been writing about her clothes, and she sort of made a comment about, she was going to visit refugee camp, and she said, people keep writing stories about me and my clothes, and what do they expect me to turn up in a refugee camp in a ball gown? And she was getting a bit touchy about it then.
The photographers had a crucial part to play in shaping Diana's new image, but it was a delicate business. In Zimbabwe, Diana posed for this picture on their request. She later regretted it.
I remember talking to Diana about this very shot. We were probably not very happy with it. I cringe now when I think about it, because it's a very negative image of, the black child asking for food from the beautifully dressed white lady, and it subsequently felt very patronising. I remember saying to her, I would never ask you to do that now, and she said to me, no, and I wouldn't let you.
Diana was working out how best to make her mark. To add to the impact she could make through photographs, she was beginning to speak about causes. She hired a voice coach whose first task was to write a speech on eating disorders, which her officials were nervous about.
Her staff felt that she had to sort of keep her head down and work within, whereas I suppose to an extent my attitude was, why are we doing a speech on bulimia if you don't want her to talk about it?
Diana chose to make a stand and began the speech with what was in effect a personal admission that she had been a bulimia victim.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have it on very good authority that the quest for perfection our society demands can leave the individual gasping for breath at every turn.
And it was like I got it, and she phoned me up later that afternoon. She said, I'm lying on the bed and I just feel so good. I don't know what to do with this feeling. I said, just bloody remember it. This feeling that you've got now, this is who you really are. This is what you're about for the future.
In the year since her separation, Diana had shed her old image and proved she could play a solo part on the world stage. But she had set a pace that would be hard to keep up.
I was constantly trying to persuade her to do things that I thought would help the people for whom we were working. The media did exactly the same for their reasons. She must have sometimes gone home and gone to bed and thought, for goodness sake, will you lot leave me alone?
The year had also seen an increase in intrusive press attention, in particular the publication of the shockingly intimate pictures of the princess in the gym. The pressure of being in the spotlight had become too much. In December 1993, Diana announced her decision to resign from public life.
This picture really did sum up the story of the day. There she is with her head down, looking unhappy, and she's a battery of photographers behind her, every lens trained on her for every move. You didn't have to write anything to go with that picture.
If Diana thought she could switch the media interest in her off, she was wrong. The paparazzi were desperate for pictures and followed her everywhere. And with palace security gone, at her own request, Diana was not properly protected. One sensational snap of the princess meant serious money.
It was a very lucrative business for paparazzis. They could make hundreds of thousands of pounds with the right shot in one day. So it attracted a lot of people to spend, they could afford to spend the time just waiting for that one shot, and they wouldn't have to do any more work for another year.
Jane didn't want to be part of it.
I was very disillusioned with the job, very disillusioned with some of my colleagues, and I just felt quite bitter in a way that some of them had pulled my job down to that level.
Diana was often on the defensive, and it showed in the photographs.
This is what I call her mad eyes day. If you got that look at you, you thought, oh God, what have I done wrong? What have I done to upset her? But I think she would have given anybody that look on days like that.
Jane refused to photograph the princess unless the cameras were specifically invited, as they were to certain public events, particularly charity visits. Although Diana said she was withdrawing from royal duties, she continued as patron of over 100 charities. In her quest to become a humanitarian champion, she needed her charities just as they needed her.
We did get attention we would not had before. We did get corporate and individual financial support we would not have had otherwise. On the other hand, we gave the sort of images, the sort of events without which her image would have been rather different.
Diana visited the Institute of Conductive Education in October 1995. Jane was one of the photographers invited to be there. The Princess's guide for part of her visit was 10-year-old Lawrence Chambers, a child with cerebral palsy.
And I spotted that little boy right from the beginning of the visit because he was quite a character.
The moment when the Princess gave Lawrence a goodbye hug made the photographer's day.
Immediately afterwards, Lawrence was mobbed by the press, and they say, "What did she say?" And she said something like, according to Lawrence, "I don't get many hugs like that nowadays."
Newspapers took their cue and used the picture as evidence of the Princess's deep need for affection. This was the sort of image which set her apart from the rest of the royal family. It was published throughout the world, showing the extraordinary effect she had on her adoring public. It was also an image which created public sympathy at a time when Diana was soon to need it. A month later, she gave the shock television interview in which she admitted her infidelity to the world. She also said though she wouldn't be Queen of England, she wanted to be Queen of people's hearts. The interview made divorce inevitable. Loosening her ties with the palace left Diana free to take complete control of her charity work.
My best memory of her feeling that she had found the right niche was on the trip to Angola, where she went not as a member of the royal household. I know, travelling in the Land Cruiser on one occasion, she expressed that this was what she wanted to do in the future. This is how she wanted to work. She'd done her homework. She knew why she was there. She knew what information she needed to get a hold of so that she could say the right thing when she got back.
She wasn't part of the palace system, it was Diana. She had managed to establish her own identity, and everything that's in the photographs, which fed back to the public, established the woman in her own right.
The last charity event at which Jane photographed Diana was a visit here to the London Lighthouse, a centre for people with HIV. Images of the Princess with AIDS patients had the most enduring impact on public opinion of all.
She created a very new attitude towards people with HIV, especially among families, friends, partners, that it was perfectly all right to show affection, perfect right to care for them. They needed someone to put their arms around them, and Diana was prepared to do it.
AIDS became so high profile because of her. She put a sort of heart into it and really worked hard for them, and I think it paid off. The profile's gone down so much since she hasn't been there. You don't see it every week in the magazines anymore like you did when she was alive.
The Princess's ability to focus attention on worthy causes always went hand in hand with a media obsession with her private and family life.